This is a discussion about Gen X, who are usually at this time in companies the leaders, and Gen Z, who are the entering newest employees. And why this matters to you all, I am not a technologist, is because in tech, tech is always filled with new college hires and the youngest entering generation. So, but before we begin, because as I walked around, several people didn't really know, like, if I'm this old, what generation do I fit into? So show of hands, everybody born after before 1980. Okay, we are either boomers or Gen X. Everybody born after 1997. I know there's a group of Reed students over here. So you guys are Gen Z. And I promised to try to be gentle and polite because I didn't know we were going to have who we were going to have the audience. And everybody else, the rest of you, are millennials or Gen Y. And while you are very important, the folks that raised their hands first, they're the ones that are now the senior directors and the vice presidents and the leadership of the company. So I think the reason that I like to work with early career professionals and try to help early career professionals fit into companies is because the mistakes I made and the stupid mistakes I made in my first two jobs they still make me cringe. And so, yes, I will share one small story. My first job out of law school, I worked for an airline. And I thought I had this incredibly great, amazing, wonderful, innovative idea on what I was going to do. And I was going to teach it to all the other lawyers in the department. And I went and told my boss, and he shut me down. And I was so upset and so annoyed that when I walked away, I mumbled under my breath, but loud enough for him to hear, yeah, you know, if the Wright brothers had thought like you did, like there wouldn't even be planes and neither of us would have a job. Yeah, I was not an easy employee, but I was an outlier for my generation. I was not part of a generation, all of whom are anxious now for change in the workplace. And the gap between Gen X leaders and Gen Z employees is more profound than any other entering generation that I've seen or studied. And it's because not only do Gen Z think differently, they're unapologetic about their ideas. And Gen X, we have some pretty strong beliefs and norms, and we're not budging either. So Gen X and Gen Z do not think the same way. And why is that? It's because what was going on in the world when we grew up shaped who we are and how we think. And that's having some knock-on effects in the workplace. So culture, like I said, shapes who we are. Let me give you a couple of examples, starting with Gen X. Gen X grew up before the internet, before cell phones. We didn't have bike helmets. We didn't have seat belts. We didn't have warning labels on toys. Gen X's parents, like, we got thrown out of the house and told, just go out and play. Come home when the street lights come on, or come home when it's dinner time. So Gen X had to learn things on their own by themselves really fast. They never asked for help. They never showed their feelings. They just toughed it out. Now, they grew up during Enron and Watergate, so they're not really sure that institutions were ever kind of good, but they knew that in the world they grew up in, if they got a job and they worked really hard and they climbed the ladder, that they would be able to have the American dream. So by that, I mean a house, a car, a golden retriever, and raise a couple of kids. Gen Z, on the other hand, has never known a world that wasn't connected. They grew up, they got cell phones in elementary school, specifically so their parents knew where they were. And free play was replaced by play dates and lessons. So they are very used to collaboration and to a lot of feedback along the way. They also had social upheaval and business scandal during their lifetime, but because the world was so much more connected, that was usually followed by activism. So they have a very different idea about the goodness of corporations. They think that businesses ought to take a stand. A lot of Gen Z also believes that the world is going to burn up in their lifetime, and who knows if that's true or not. And so they are trying to cram as much experience as they can into the shortest period of time they can. And also, unfortunately, because right now inflation and salaries are not in pace with each other, inflation's outpacing salary increases, they don't know that they're ever going to be able to live the American dream. And so that explains why they are so short and frustrated with rules in the workplace that don't resonate with them, that they don't think is important, that they don't think are important. So both sets of thinking are absolutely true. It just depends on whose vantage point it's coming from. But we don't tend to give each other the benefit of the doubt like that. We tend to judge each other, and that's having some unfortunate workplace outcomes. And to show you what I mean, I need 2 volunteers from the audience. I already picked them. You guys have to come up here fast because I only have 8 minutes. So one of you come up, or both of you come up, and I'll hand you the microphone. Bear and Nick are going to read 2 scenarios that are interactions between Gen Z employees and Gen X bosses, and then we're going to guess which one is true.
When a Gen Z employee asked her boss for a raise, she was fully prepared to lay out her worth. The boss, a well-meaning manager who wasn't much older than she was, explained there was a formal raise process, how it worked. Disregarding this, our eager employee named a number anyway and was ready to negotiate. But the boss said, if you got that, you'd actually make more than me. The employee blinked and said, aren't you ashamed of yourself? It's unclear if she got the raise, but rumor has it the boss is now brushing up this resume.
Thank you. Story number 2.
At a prestigious, high-pressure consulting firm, a junior analyst was assigned to an important deal that was supposed to close right after the 4th of July. The partner told him, we might need your help over the holiday if anything urgent comes up. The analyst said nothing, seemingly on board. But when the partner reached out over the 4th, he got radio silence. No texts, no calls, nothing. The first day back, the angry partner asked, why didn't you respond? The associate replied, I was demonstrating work-life balance. Suffice to say, he enjoyed plenty of work-life balance shortly after on his permanent vacation.
Okay. Story 1, that's the true one. Story 2, that's the true one. Trick question. Both stories are absolutely true, both told to me either by the Gen Z employee or by the leader. So that's how bad it can get. So what is it that we're going to do about this? To make progress, we need to be able to hold both opinions, both points of view of both generations simultaneously, assume that there is merit in both of them, and work from there. At the end of the day, we need to be able to do this, and closing this gap is not about waiting for HR to put in some high-level program that's going to make the new generation of entering employees work with the leadership. It's about being able to work on an individual basis. It's about changing mindsets, because those individual conversations that you just heard, that's what's driving people crazy. That's what's making Gen X leadership terminate Gen Z employees, because they can't understand them and they don't want them around. And likewise, what's making Gen Z employees so angry that they are filming their terminations and they are shaming those same managers by posting them on the internet. So we have got to change our mindsets. So how do you do that? You do that with 3 steps or 3 lenses. The first one is called non-judgmental curiosity. What does that mean? That means that you ask the other person, what do you know, or what have you seen, or what makes you think or act that way, in a non-judgmental way. And you would be amazed how much context you get, how much wonderful information you get just by asking, tell me more, in a non-judgmental way. The second step is reciprocal learning. And that means, okay, now I've got the background story. Now I know where both sides are coming from. What can we do together to come up with a unique, collaborative, workable solution? And then the third step is gracious patience. And because this collaboration has been decided and you're going to try something, it's about maintaining trust as you go along. So what can you work out now so that you can test over time that what you decided is working, whether it needs to be retweaked, and that you continue to maintain that trust and build that relationship? So let's suppose that let's go back to the story with the consulting firm, and let's suppose that the partner there had just done step one, the non-judgmental curiosity step. If you read through this, what you will see is that the manager had become the boy that cried wolf. Every single time he asked the new employee for something, it was always urgent. It was on the weekends. It was at night. And it really didn't need to be, and it didn't even need to be done for a day or two. And so the employee, just like in the story, the fable of the boy that cried wolf, stopped paying attention and didn't think anything that he said was really that urgent. And so if they've just done this first step and that story would have come out, the two could have found a better way of communicating, found a better way of talking to each other, and it probably would have saved this employee their job. So I know that there's probably some of you sitting out in the audience right now going, oh my gosh, this is complicated and it's 3 steps and they never had to do this before. Every other generation, like the millennials that are sitting in the room, they just got with the program and they fell in line, and I don't wanna. So to you, I say, yes, it is work and it will take some practice, but it's gotta be better than getting so frustrated that you fire somebody or they get so upset that they quit. And one other thing about doing this work. So it's been 30 years and I still remember how my first manager treated me. And I just told that story to an entire room full of strangers. I'm dissing this guy still. And so do you want that to have that to be your legacy? Or would you rather be remembered as the peer or the manager who unlocked a young person's creativity and ability? And that's what I have to say. And with that, I want to say thank you.